First, let's start here, and I'll do the intro again. All right, so this is Talking Solutions. I'm Jonathan Polyp Saffer, and technical difficulties happen, and they happened, and now we're moving forward. But just restarting because we've got a very flexible group of people here, very lovely souls, and yeah, the main mission between I did it again. I said between. The main mission behind Talking Solutions is to bring together people that want to see positive change in the world. And the solutions exist out there. There's all sorts of alternates for everything. And we have people on this panel that are each providing solutions in society in their own way to make it a better world. So we can do this. Just come together. And yeah, and we need politicians that talk about peace, love, and cooperation, not division. And yeah, we can get there. We can make a peaceful society that's compassionate and collaborative. And here we go again. The question, the big question, is how to bridge the political divide, how to bring people together. If you could snap your fingers, magically change everything, and all of a sudden it's all good and we're all together in one world, one humans on this earth, working together, what would that be? And then also, what's a practical thing that you've seen either personally or you heard about, you read about, that you've seen that helps bring people together that normally would be fighting and conflicting? So yes, we're going to start all the way down there with Jill, just Jill, and and start off with just an introduction of yourself, who you are, what you stand for, what you don't stand for. All that good stuff.
Cool. So, my name is Jillian Gerardin, but my stage name is Just Jill, and I am a hip hop artist as well as a cipher organizer for the Bridgeside Cipher. Our nonprofit is called the Cambridge Hip Hop Collective, and one of our big things is building bridges between other backgrounds and other communities through hip hop. And yeah, I consider myself a huge dreamer. Sometimes I feel like, my thoughts are sometimes a little unrealistic, but I feel like this is a space where we can really explore if there was if we could just all snap our fingers and everything be okay. That would be pretty awesome. So I think one thing it really takes for the vast majority of us to all come together and things be okay, I guess, on whether it's a political perspective or just in general. I feel like we're all humans on this earth. I think one thing that it really takes is a lot of empathy with people. And I think that there are so many people with so many different stories. When we're hosting our ciphers, or even just artists and creatives in general, we all have stories to tell. And growing up in Cambridge, I've just been exposed to so many different backgrounds of people and different walks of life in general. Even growing up, I think Cambridge has always been a really small city for me. So just having that privilege of being around so many different people, and then kind of growing up and moving out and seeing, the divide and the not so nice side of people, and yeah, just the divide of a lot of hate in the world, and not really being exposed to that as much as I feel like I was when I was younger, just growing up, and the reality of the world. really took just like a toll on me as a person, as a young woman, and being growing up as a mixed person. Um, so yeah, I think a lot of it, takes of just stepping outside of where you come from, and your perspective on people. When I'm hosting the ciphers or just like meeting different people in the performance scene in general, being exposed to a lot of people's stories, where they come from, their thoughts and perspectives, whether we agree with them or not, and just being able to listen to other people's perspectives and their thoughts when it comes to anything, whether it's a divide between like men and women, and just that divide, or age when it comes to young people and older folks, and that generational gap. I think it takes a lot of understanding, you know people who aren't like generations older than mine. I'm a 90s kid, so I feel like I've grown, or I've seen the kind of the beginning of the technology, and being on like cell phones. Earlier we were talking about when we got our first cell phone. So yeah, just seeing the before we had cell phones and we're on our computers all the time, and having that perspective to where the youth is now, where they were born into technology. Just seeing different perspectives from other people, and just kind of stepping out of what you grew up with. I think it just takes a lot of empathy and a lot of understanding from people. And I hope that one day, that people, humans in general, can just grasp that. When it comes to leadership, I think there is a huge divide where people are just think like there's conservative and then there's liberal, and that's what you choose, and that's where you have to go with when it comes to leadership, and who's in charge in our country, or like in society in general. And I think as I've gotten older, um, I think it's okay to change your mind on certain things, and just kind of step out of the box with what you're used to. Um, but yeah, I think it just takes a lot of compassion and a lot of meeting other people in other communities, um, but also knowing how to navigate, and having a lot of understanding of how people grew up and where they came from and why they feel the way they feel. Um, and I think that also is just like very complex, and that takes a lot of like self work and diving into, who you are, and just like being exposed to different communities and different people. Um, but yeah, I just think it takes a lot of compassion, a lot of empathy for us to get where we want to be, and a lot of understanding of where people come from, um, and how they grew up. And yeah, I just think it takes a lot of, understanding, and hopefully one day we can get there. I'm not, like I said, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I have, I hope it's not a unrealistic, perspective, but I hope we can get there as humans, because like a lot of us have been saying, like we're humans first, and I think that's really important.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree. We are humans first, and I think I think that is a there's definitely a potential for us to have that positive future and to have the world peace. It's definitely possible. I think if we get enough people together, it'll work. And I love what you guys do with Bridgeside Ciphers. Like, if you haven't been to a Bridgeside Cipher, you got to go. You got to check it out because it's the most positive. Like, I've never been to a cipher before, and it's just like the most positive experience I've ever seen. They were like kids getting up, rapping, um, and everyone's just so positive and supportive and hyping each other up.
Right. Yeah. And that's another thing, especially like within the hip hop space. I think that when I first started with coming to Bridgeside, before I started organizing with the crew um, and like our team, just seeing that it's possible to be in a healthy space um, and that be normalized, and I think was just like really like moving. And I think a lot of, and I don't want to speak for everyone, but a lot of times the way we grow up isn't always the most healthiest space. Um, you know, growing up, um, for me, I was also exposed to a lot of things that I thought were normal that weren't normal. I grew up in Central Square and seeing um, a lot of people who struggled with like substance abuse and um, homelessness, um, thinking there were a lot of normal things going on that I just thought were like whatever. And now as an adult, I'm like, oh, this is really messed up. Like, um, and like when it comes to hip hop, there's a lot of um, times like where women are disrespected or like a lot of homophobia, um, and just like the queer community and a lot of things that are just normalized. And when you see a vast majority of different communities just coming together in one, um, and like when we have our ciphers, it's like the homeless community coming in and um, all shapes and sizes of women, children hopping in, and all different backgrounds in the cipher, and it not being you know it it being okay with it not being disrespectful and being able to tell your story, and it just be like a okay healthy environment and people like respecting that. And it's okay when you're not like used to that, but learning how to get used to that, I think is really important. So seeing that it's possible for there to be healthy environments is just like really moving when you're not used to something like that, and it being like, whoa, like like this can be achieved and it be like consistent. um and yeah, I'm just like really grateful and proud that we've been able to kind of show that narrative that that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing. Yeah. Ah, why is it called a cipher?
So like the definition of a hip hop cipher is when people like singers, rappers, and poets, creatives, they get together in a circle and take turns performing. Um, and like even to dig deeper into that, like um, historically, like it started off with like griots and drum circles, um, and then like I think more in like modern current times, like you know in like in Brooklyn they used to have ciphers, in New York in the park, and take turns performing. So yeah, I always try to define what it is because I know not everyone knows and I'm just so used to talking about it. But yeah, like a cipher circle. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So for those who aren't physically here, um, one of the audience members is talking about how a cipher um, was a code from a coding perspective was something used to break the Nazi code. Yeah, yeah. So that's also interesting. Um, so Stacks, we're gonna start off. You're just gonna introduce yourself. You're gonna talk about who you are, what you do, and then you're gonna give your you know bringing people together as you talked about humanity, and and you also mentioned like the idea of like people that are traditionally canceled, giving them a platform. It's like, yeah, that's really cool. But I'll let you speak for yourself.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you for the people who are here in person. I will find new ways to explain what I'd already said. Thank you for your patience. So I go by Stacks. I'm a Boston native, very Boston proud. I wear it on my sleeves. I am a community connector and an entrepreneur. I do a lot of work in the music business space, graduated from Berklee College of Music just last month. So, yeah, I have my own company, Rooted Management, and I manage songwriters, producers, and artists, and just overall invest in talent development. And then on the side, I help a few different organizations, from Beat the Odds, which is based locally in Boston. The Floor Lords, also based in Boston, another hip hop dance group, very historical. Femit Forward, which is an organization that serves to uplift women of color in entertainment, and Music Managers Forum, which is a much bigger organization. We have branches. We have an international and national here in the U.S. Branch, and is just focused on putting or creating resources for music managers and self-managed artists. So I'm a little all over, but in general, I just love to be a resource. Like I literally go around. I also do some work with the Testing Lab, which is like a local platform for emerging artists in Brockton. Like I genuinely just go around and I see people building things, and if I see that I have resources and information or a network that could help another local entrepreneur, I'm there immediately, whether it's paid or not. So that's really what I'm about. It's being a resource and being a mirror. My ultimate purpose is really to be a mirror. That is what I believe. That's what I'm here for, to help people see each other, to help people see themselves, and to use whatever light I have to ignite those of others. Yeah, so to answer your question, um, I'll start off with the quote that I had opened with from Bell Hooks, that was also from Martin Luther King, that our biggest dilemma as a people is the fact that we're in a spiritual crisis, something of a psychological war. I also was reminded of a quote that one of my good friends and inspirations in this community, Sadiq, he's another artist manager and also works at Live Nation. I met with him and he said one of my favorite quotes, and I definitely like steal it and use it from time to time. He said, I love putting people in context. I love putting people in context. I love, for me, like anytime I meet with someone, anytime there's an unfamiliar face that is now, I'm now crossing paths with at any point in time, it is my mission to understand why you are the way that you are, how you are as a human being. In those moments, I have some of the most beautiful conversations. Like ever since, and this is something new for me. Like only like about 2 years ago did I really start moving with this much intention and purpose. And the conversations and the people that I've added into my circle have been so just inspiring and like spiritually fulfilling for me. I was talking earlier about the term self-actualization, which a lot of philosophers throw around, a lot of books around like self-awareness will throw around. As I said, I really think it's a fancy way of saying the process of finding inner purpose and inner peace. Finding that question of like why are we here? Why, out of all the cells that could have been chosen, why are we here? Why are you doing what you're doing? And I think that's such. I only like was exposed to that question through a book. If I had not picked up books, I think I picked up the four agreements from a friend. Oh my God! Even then, that book I didn't read it because I wouldn't have read it if one of my friends didn't recommend the book to me. Like I didn't think about, okay, why why am I at Berkeley? Why am I studying what I'm studying? Why do I feel like all the internal narratives that I have in my head, where are they coming from? Because it's not just fact. Like I think because we're not conditioned to question our internal narrative and just question life in general, we find as a society we're in a lot of turmoil. I think it stems from people not understanding themselves. There's a quote that RuPaul, RuPaul's Drag Race, he says all the time, how are you gonna love somebody else? Something along the lines of like, how are you gonna love somebody else if you can't love yourself? Like I genuinely think love, like the ability to have a community and to the ability to love one another cannot occur if you do not love yourself. I think you fully understand what love is and what feels like once you can say that it applies to you. Once you feel that you love yourself unconditionally. There's a difference between conditional and unconditional love. So yeah, I was as I was saying earlier, my company, Rooted Management, it's so much more than the music industry. I tell people all the time, actually from Amber Grimes, when she said this, I was like, oh my God, she's another executive in the music industry with Love Renaissance. And she was like, I don't want to be remembered for anything I do in the music industry. And I was like, wow, this is how I've been feeling, but I didn't quite know the words to say that. So Rooted is really so much more than management. It's so much more than the music business. As much as I love entertainment, I love music. The music industry is a whole other conversation. But I really want Rooted to be, it will be a brand that stems into philanthropic and philosophical endeavors, and it will eventually be a platform for to showcase what it looks like to have genuine, authentic human conversation through the lens of unconditional love. That's really what I want to do. I want give me like the most canceled person in society, and we can get really radical with this. And the work, so much of the work that I'm doing now is to prepare for that, right? I do so much work on myself so that I can be of service to others, and I think that all goes back to the mind work that I was talking about. And that work doesn't have to be isolated, right? Like I read books and I stayed inside my house. Like at one point in time, I was quiet. Stacks, where was she? In the room, in her room, or she was at a cafe. Like I got really silent because I was doing the internal work. But there are other people who need a guide, which is why therapy is so helpful for the people who kind of need that that guidance through that process. If you're not someone who can kind of lead your own way, so I would love to help people go on that process to self-actualize and start thinking about, okay, like why do I care about this? Why do I not care about this? Why do I behave a certain way in this circumstance? What does my upbringing, my childhood, the environments I grew up in, what does all the people in my life, the media that I've consumed over time, what does all of that have to do with the person that I am today? And like I said, I didn't start putting all these dots together and seeing my own story from such a wide lens until very recently. And I hear from a bunch of other, I surround myself with people who are much older than myself. I've kind of always been like that. And I come to find that a lot of people don't reach that point, like of just looking at their story from a bird's eye view until much later on in life. You have people who don't fully like understand purpose until they're near death. Like that's very that breaks my heart because it's not to your fault that we've been socialized to walk on a grid. This grid that's been given to us, certain processes. You need to do this by a certain age. You need to go to school, do that. And we haven't been socialized to like be. I remember in high school, it was English class. I think my English teacher was the first person who saw myself before anyone else. She told anybody to like pick a word from the passage. It was like a Walt Whitman, some type of English literature. And I chose is. Like everyone else chose a noun, like a regular noun, and I chose is. That's such a weird word to choose in a book. And like I didn't see what it's like. My mind was there before I even realized, because I was so insecure back then. But like again, we haven't been socialized to exist and access the power of now. So yeah, the in terms of what I would love to see, spaces where like I literally like I see it all in my head, like just a bare room, all of us in a circle, just sitting on the floor, like no chairs or anything to, not even a stage like distinguish any type of like power or like status or anything. Just all of us literally on the same level, on the same foundation, and everyone just going one by one, and like the conversation can be free. There doesn't need to be a topic, doesn't need to be a theme. We just start somewhere and just let the conversation flow, but allow people to just be and express and share their stories. That's like my fever dream. That's kind of what I'm building toward with Rooted. But yeah, I think it starts with self before we can worry about other.
I like that. Yeah. Yeah, it definitely starts with that personal journey of unlocking, what you want, who you want to be. Well, I guess like that's a perpetual journey trying to figure out who you want to be. It always changes, but coming enough to it so you can interact with others, and I like the idea of people coming together without any pre-planned strategies. We're all just gonna get together and we're gonna talk. I like that.
Yeah, because I think that the issue, like your other question that you asked before about like whether you've seen people from different backgrounds coming together. Truthfully, I haven't seen it, and it's the more I think about it, it's hard. Like if you have an event, of course people, and you like say what the event is, and it's based around a certain topic. Of course, people who are like-minded are going to be in that space. Like if we really think about it, how do we create an event where non-like-minded people, like people from literal opposite ends of whatever spectrum, are there? When you create an event, people who are interested in, like it's automatically bringing together people who are interested in that topic or in that community. A lot of these events in Boston have been beautiful. I love popping up to all these events, which I've seen you guys at. But in terms of like bringing the extreme opposite, which we need, as much as like it's so easy to see someone who believes in the exact opposite things as you, it is so easy to cancel them, especially with cancel culture nowadays. It's so easy to just be like, nope. I There's a boundary though, of course. Like if that person is exuding negative energy and taking away from your inner peace, then that's like a whole other decision that you can make. But like I think it has to start with some kind of conversation. How do we build a platform where, like for example, people who truly believe in peace and people who like want nothing to do with it, I think they should also be in the room. They have to be in the room, otherwise we can't find equilibrium. So like those are some of the questions that I've been pondering on.
I like that. I do. I think that would be great if we can. And the only thought I have that comes straight to my mind is we just need to send out two different flyers. One that says, "Hey, we need peace in the world," and the other one's like, "Let's burn it all down." And then they all come, and it's the same event. You know, that might be a strategy. We could try it. I feel like that would actually work. It's like invite out a bunch of people, be like, "Hey, we're having a Democratic Party meeting. Hey, we're having a Republican Party meeting." And everyone gets together and be like, surprise! We're all one now. Talk to each other. Or like then the door closes and it's a escape room, and it's like, in order to get out, you guys need to figure out information that both parties care about. All right, go. Yeah. So, Magenta.
Gamified political hacking. I like it. My name is Magenta Seba. I'm an artist and developer. I mostly work with a community called Bloom Network. It's a global cyber physical social network where people are coming together around local food, around building bioregional economies, teaching each other transformative justice. And so it's, a lot of times bringing people together from different movements to learn from one another and build power together and solve our most common challenges. So there's about 30 local hubs in 11 countries. we've been working together for the past 15 years. And then we have our own custom social network, bloomnetwork.earth, where, you know, it's instead of like gluing people to the screen, everything about it is designed to get you off of your computer and into, you know, doing cool stuff with your neighbors. And so I think that's kind of really where I think starting there with doing things together, where you're not necessarily talking or asserting a frame. It's like, hey, we're having a neighborhood potluck. Like, we're just getting to know each other. Or, hey, you know, a few of us are building a front yard community garden and installing a permaculture swale or something that routes water. And so everyone who walks by there sees that and is like, what is this about? And maybe you have some other events at the house or something like that. And so that kind of like building local community is one thing I've been seeing be effective across political boundaries and bringing people together across different backgrounds. Another thing I see or have read about that I've heard is helpful, there's a book called Empowering Public Wisdom by Tom Atlee, who's a governance researcher. He's probably, I don't know how old he is now, in his 80s maybe, he's not quite that old. But he talks about, I think it's called Citizen Deliberative Council, where people are randomly selected from an area well, it's not totally random, it's representative of different backgrounds and classes, and I don't know what all matrix they use to do that. But they'll get together and talk about and interview different kinds of experts about a policy that's being proposed for their civic legislation. And they'll do this like extensive, I think it's a 12-day process, I forget. And then they issue a recommendation. Like, we reviewed this is what we found, this is what we recommend. And they're not allowed to like actually be the people making the decision. But it, again, that's called a Citizen Deliberative Council. And that is another forum, because they'll publish their findings and what they're dialoguing about across difference. There's another facilitation method, actually, I just remembered, called dynamic facilitation. And people are trained very deeply to bring people together across like really intense dimensions of conflict, whether that's historical, intergenerational, what have you. And they have all kinds of toolkits. Like, I freaking love these facilitators. And they'll really, really go deep with people. Like, okay, where is this coming from? What are you experiencing? And they're trained. I think a lot of them also have like some degree of transpersonal psychology background. So kind of speaking to, I think, what you were talking about, Stacks, with like that, the self-reflection and thinking. So giving people the space to do that and uncover these, you know, blind things that they're parroting, or, you know, traumas and stuff that just are unconsciously expressing, and no one's ever given them the space, let alone like directly with the person they're having the deep conflict with, to kind of work it out. So yeah, I guess like the final thing, if I could wave a magic wand, is that more people who end up going to communism or socialism as a like method for organizing against violence and other kinds of social and socioeconomic ills would find anarchism instead. Just because it's yeah, I mean, there's a lot I could say about that, but I'll just kind of stop there. Just like we're running our governments, our state governments, like nation state governments, on 17th century technology. And we have technology today that allows like direct decision making, even extraordinarily sophisticated, like overlapping hierarchies of people from different backgrounds making decisions about stuff. We do not have to structure our socio-political, economic power game to these power pyramids and like lobbyists, and use this infrastructure that has grown through a history of genocide and slavery and colonization. And it's so entrenched in those systems, and I think we're really in a crisis point of those are just like run us into the ground in so many ways. And like, I just hope I see in my lifetime that they start to dissolve and people begin to make more consensual local and bioregional power together, and rely less on these brittle top-down, often white men, or it's usually like men, at least in different countries. Yeah, those power dynamics are just like not necessary anymore. And so I think dissolving those, having these direct experiences of caring for one another and building that to higher and higher layers of like direct autonomous coordination is gonna, help get us out of some of the political quagmires that we're in. And I just hope we do it fast enough to avert, was it like, I forget how many millions, 50 million, up to 2 billion people are going to end up migrating by the end of the 21st century, if I remember that stat correctly, because of climate change and like related political things. So like we're really in the next decades are going to start to get more and more extreme, and we'll be pressured to figure our shit out, or like that many people are going to die.
Yeah, I find it interesting when you talk about anarchy, because I know another person who told me about anarchy. He's an old roommate, and he's like a lot of people think anarchy. Like there's a movie called Talladega Nights, and there's this kid. Their kid runs. There's a scene where he's running amok, and he's like anarchy. He's just running around and throwing things everywhere, and so like that's what I think a lot of people think when they think anarchy. But the way he described it is like he's like people think anarchy is like, oh, all this like fighting and like craziness, but anarchy is really just like, all right, we're gonna have a meeting about how do you all feel about starting this meeting? Are we all in agreement that we're starting this? All right, we're all starting this meeting. Like that's like anarchy, right? About like there's no like real, there's no government, there's no like official structure. It's like the people operate it.
Yeah, it's consent and nonviolence.
Yeah, it's very peaceful. And I think it's intentional that that as a society we see anarchy as like a violent thing, because if we all knew that anarchy really meant like peace and people coming together, then our government would probably be like, oh no, we don't want them to believe that. They need us. We need to be a democratic republic. Heavy on the republic. We need to be represented, and we need representatives for all the ignorant people and the bigots. They need their That's a whole side note for me, but I think that's a problem. There's certain thought processes that don't need to be represented. We don't need it. You don't need to represent that. Okay? But I digress. So what you mentioned how like now like we live in a time where technology can really set us up where we can have a true democracy. And like socialism and communism, those are negative words. Those are like 4-letter words. People don't like them, but I mean they've always slid into a dictatorship. So we've never really had a socialist or communist society where the people control the production of and distribution of resources. But it seems like with technology, where we could be able to do it with blockchain and AI, where then we have to figure out how to get people to cooperate and love each other, which is its own challenge. But I mean, kids get along well. So I think it's just our society pushes us in these bad directions, and then we're influenced by older generations that have their own baggage, and they're like, "Here you go, it's great, you'll enjoy it. It's on wheels." Yeah, can you give me like a summary of how you see technology being able to help us have a true democracy?
Yeah, something very simple was coming to my mind, and now it has left it. But
From the audience, we have some insights. Do you want to speak a microphone? You can if you want to. It's an offer. Threw it out there. All right. So he threw it out there, and it's in the air. And basically, to summarize, less things on paper, everything digital, The MBTA has way too much stuff on paper. You need to get your act together there. Yeah. But like he's not like he had no emotion about it. I have emotion about it because I'm not happy. Okay. He's fine. He's like, I just want to tell you, but I'm not happy now. I know this thing. You need to fix it. And the whole gun thing, like, you know, a lot of guns information's on paper, but it should be digital. And I am a gun owner. I've been a gun owner for 10, 15 years. I love guns. I love them, but they're dangerous. We should have psychological evaluations to make sure we're all right, and that everything's good. Because if we're not, you know, it's not like it's a hammer where, you know, you got to be pretty close proximity for something bad to happen. They're dangerous, and we need to. Let's have a international. Well, that might not work, but a national license to carry. In order to get it, you have to get psychological evaluation once every, you know, year, 2 years, or whatever. But then you can carry it everywhere across the United States, federal. That will work, right? If you like guns, you'll be happy about that. Let's do that. All right. So, yes.
Oh, yeah. So with blockchain and machine learning, it's possible, for example, I mean, we're a little bit far away from this yet, aside from small experiments. But one, allocating capital efficiently into like community-led, like grassroots mobilization is more possible through blockchain because you have legibility of the impact and beneficial outcomes of that kind of organizing, whereas they're not really legible to centralized finance institutions and structurally incompatible with banking. So that's like one way of financial governance that is possible with the tech. And then it's possible, I've actually designed mechanisms with teams where you scan on-chain data to assess what addresses, on blockchain you have an address that you use to vote and to send money around and other forms of like contracts and information. And you can assess like who would be a good decision maker about this specific topic or area, and then you give them voting power in it, and that can all be automated and you know, at any point in time, like reconfigured and updated. Whereas in, you know, the legacy governance systems we have, you have a lot of out-to-date code is like a very like straightforward way of saying it, I think, and it's very difficult to decommission code and laws that have been put in place. So those kinds of the digital governance systems that are possible today enable much more like agile and ultimately humane systems. I mean, I won't go all into it, but yeah.
Awesome. Appreciate that. So now you're going to go again, talk about yourself, what you do, who you are, and then, yeah, like bridging the political divide, what you've seen. You talked about Juneteenth. So, yeah, people coming together. And if you could, you know, I used to say the Thanos, if you could do a Thanos snap, but that's not great because afterwards there's a lot of repercussions on your body from doing the Thanos snap. I mean, it killed Iron Man. He died. Spoiler alert. Sorry if you haven't seen it yet. But, yeah. So maybe not the Thanos snap, but a magical snap where there's no consequence on your physical body and the rest of the world just bends to your will.
Thanks, Jonathan. My name is Carolyn Lewinberg. I am a visual artist and urban gardener and a educator and a mom. This is Nico here. And I do work in communities to kind of like use my superpower of making things with people to build connections between people and place, between cultural groups, between ecosystems and people. I think my magical Thanos snap would be like for people to realize like, oh my God, we're all connected. Like my well-being is really connected to your well-being and the well-being of that, soil organisms over there and that tree. Oh, I'm talking into the mic. Um, I really believe that there's this so many disconnections between people, harming each other. There's just an unbelievable amount of harm being enacted between people, between cultural groups. That's so strategic, and they think that their lives are going to be better if this cultural group is wiped off the map, and it is not. It just doesn't work. It's never worked. You can look in the history of humankind, and people have been doing this for thousands of years, and here we are. We're just getting better technology to, destroy each other. And look at where the earth is shutting down. The earth is like, nah. All right, we're just gonna have bigger storms, and I don't know why you're keeping like building high rises on the beach because we're gonna take that out. It's wild. So yeah, my magic Thanos snap, people would be like, oh my gosh, like I need to care for the planet. I need to care for you and you, my life will be better. My life is not going to be better if I'm trying to dominate. Domination never worked. So in my art, I was talking about this community event that I was part of. So I do a lot of like, I don't know. I've done some nice like rain gardens and sculptural installations and like pop up kind of sculptural things to create events for people to come together. So I like to fancy myself like kind of a bridge builder a little bit. I think that's part of my practice to help people realize the interconnectivity. So I do a lot, with schools. I'm lucky to have a child who goes to a really incredible school, who's always down to like be involved in community events. So working with Eggleston Square Main Street, Eggleston Square Neighborhood Association, shout out to them, local businesses. I live in a community where people are down for that. They're like, oh, cool, like there's this park and we're gonna, it's a safer place when there's events happening, because before the event happens, we all come out, we clean the park, and we get to know the people that hang out in the park. There's a lot of substance abuse and homelessness in my neighborhood, and all those people are people, and they want the world to be a better place, and for us to co-create something, like it lifts everybody up. Everybody, the community is better when everybody is celebrating together. And I think what's happened in our community is when we have an event, folks that hang out in the park are like, oh, this thing's happening, and there's like some shame associated with where they're at in life, and they're not there. And I feel like there's a lot of trust being built between the communities who hang out in the park and between the folks who produce the events and the artists and the business owners. And so I'm proud of my community for our Juneteenth event, because there was like so many folks that hang out in the park stuck around. We all shared food. We listened to music. There were speakers. One of the speakers, did a beautiful reading, talked about the history of their family, shout out to Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, and just talking about the stigmas to mental health, and that we all have to acknowledge that everybody needs to work on their own mental health and help each other do that. That it's so important for people, like what Stax was saying about self-actualization. Like we have to love ourselves in order to love each other, and so that work has to start with self-love. So I am just grateful to be sort of like tackling these issues in, like, we're all sort of like, our hearts are very similar, but the way we navigate is very different, and I just love that, and I think that's what's needed, thinking about like biodiversity and ecosystems. Like we all bring something different um, to the ecosystem, and that's what makes it strong. So it's really fun and an honor to sort of be talking through all this stuff with you guys and learning about how you approach all of these issues.
Awesome. Appreciate y'all, and appreciate you going through the whole thing again. Like you were saying about, like, if everybody could just be like, oh my God, like I gotta care for you same way I care for myself. I gotta care for myself. There's some people, like, they care more about other people than do about themselves, and then they sacrifice themselves. So it like works both ways. Care about myself the way I care about the people. I gotta care about the planet, care about the earth. And like you said, earth is just like, all right, so y'all gotta go. I'm just gonna we're gonna do huge storms and just wipe people and things. Like, literally for the last several years, every summer starts, I say to my friends, I'm like, hey man, it's about to be summer, people are gonna die. And they really are, though. Because like every year now, people die from heat stroke and like weather related things. Like, it's like back in the day when we were kids, in the 90s, in the 80s and 90s, we're just like, oh hey, it's summer, guys, isn't life great? Now, like, every season has people dying, whether it's hurricanes, tornadoes, and that's all, like, hurricanes, tornadoes caused by that's the earth trying to release its heat. That's its heat release valve. It's like, all right, hurricane. Oh, there's a population there? No, not anymore. Like,
I just read this morning in the New York Times that 450 folks that were doing the pilgrimage to Mecca died. The temperatures were like 120 degrees in Saudi Arabia, and that was like this small headline today, and I'm like, oh my God, 450 people. It's wild.
yeah, they're like, the Celtics won, big letters. Also, 450 people died in the Middle East. Anyways, let's get back to today's sports. I'm not against sports. I like sports. They're fun to watch. I just also feel like it would be great if we had, like, if there was arenas where we're watching scientists, like, solve major problems. We were like, oh, look, they found the results. Did they test the methods? Was it peer reviewed? It was. Here we go. The hypothesis is proven not to be false, and that's my own little thing. All scientific facts are up for debate, but you have to experiment and conduct the experiment in a way that other people can replicate your experiment and your methods and come up with the same result. If they don't, then it's not a scientific experiment. So just know that. And this is great, because the hypothesis is proven not to be false, which means it's always open for, you can run experiments and try to prove it to be false. And that happens. But gravity and the Earth being a ball, a sphere, that's not really up for debate, even though people debate it. They're like, we live on a flat Earth. It's a flat Earth. It's not a flat Earth. If you ever see what happens to liquid in a zero gravity environment, it becomes a sphere. Why would that change in space where there's, like, we have a gravitational pull that we're in right now because the Earth's mass creates it, but that mass that pull is created by the sun. The sun creates all these little gravitational pockets, and that's how. And I'm not going to get into it because this is about talking solutions. Anyways, so we're a little bit. We're about a half an hour behind on things because we had to do the restart, and we were going to take like a little bit of a break for people to stretch, go to the bathroom, don't have an existential breakdown. Don't do that because we got to come back. But hopefully this is cathartic and it's helping. You feel less like an existential breakdown and more like hey, there's people here that are working on solutions. We're gonna be okay. We're gonna be just fine. We just need to come together. We'll be just fine. So would you guys like to take a couple minutes? Yeah, take a little bit of a break.
All right, so we're going to take a little bit of a break right now, and we'll be back. So on the live stream, you could just, chill, do your thing, and then, when you see me coming back up here, you see them coming back up here, then you hear audio coming out of your device, then you know it's time to start again. But yeah, and if you're watching this afterwards, I'm just going to see if I can edit it in YouTube Studio and just cut out that whole little bit there, and also the first half an hour. All right, so we're going to take a little bit of break.
We're live again. Well, we actually never stopped being live. It stopped for a second when we had to redo the cameras because we had to change out the batteries. And then we came back. And now we're physically back here, the 5 of us, 6 of us, because we got 6 here. Got a guest speaker that doesn't speak, just is, which is, it's a calming effect. So yeah, for this next portion, we're going to be covering equitable land access and the importance of affordable housing. We're going to talk about our education system, how we might want to see it changed, and in what ways. And then we're going to talk about taking what you're passionate about and making it reality, whether it be in a career or a hobby or whatever it is that sets you on fire, not literally, because that's never good, but figuratively, what sets you on fire makes you excited, and how you've either seeked out community that helps support that or built your own community around it to help it bloom and grow. So let's start with I also wanted to talk about sustainability and climate change. But, we already kind of talked about that a bit. Climate change is happening. It's an issue. There's 7 billion of us, and we're causing havoc on this planet. And the planet, planet's going to be fine. We might not be. We should probably figure that out. So yeah, we can talk a little bit about that as well. So we'll put those two together. We're going to talk about climate change and sustainability, how it relates to you, what your thoughts are on it, and you can just talk about what you think we should be focusing on. Actually, we'll team that up with education. Yeah, we're going to start with sustainability and environmental stuff, and you can just talk a little bit about that, and then talk about equitable land access and the importance of affordable housing and anything that you've seen as pathways towards that. So yeah, we'll start with you, because you're right next to me, and you just talked about sustainability and climate.
All right. So I would say that I think a lot about like changing resources because of the changing climate, and because people introduce different species in climates that are not their native climate, and then sometimes the plants or the species are like, I love it here, and they have no natural predators, and then all of a sudden you got all these like, phragmites, these common reeds, and like taking over wetlands and displacing native populations. Or you have green crabs that are eating eelgrass and taking away habitat for different species to grow, and eating clams, baby clams and oysters. So anyway, I've worked with different folks in my public art projects to use visual art as a tool to shed a brighter light on these different populations and ways that people can interact with the plants or with the species to mitigate the effects of the population, and also have a new food source or a material to work with. So yeah, there's a really cool organization called greencrab.org that is working with chefs and different communities to share recipes and encourage people to eat green crabs. Eat green crabs. If you don't know anything about green crabs, it's actually there's not a big market for it. But anyway, that's how we build a market, by talking about them and having tastings and stuff like that. So yeah, I think a lot about working with not thinking about invasive species, because I think that's this very human construct of we need to fight climate change. Like, this idea of fighting climate change is so dumb to me. Like, what are we fighting? Who are we fighting? Like, it's just like we have different conditions that we have to operate in, and like thinking about ways we can alter our lifestyle or our diet in order to like have more balance seems like an approach that makes a lot more sense, because I'm not fighting climate change. I don't know what that means, and I think it's annoying and dumb. So that's part of it. I'm talking about climate change, and what was the other thing?
How
Education.
So land access and so equitable land access and equitable land access, affordable housing, the importance of that, and any pathways that you know of that are like, all right, we're building more affordable housing, or like we're doing that stuff.
I think a lot about like active engagement in caring for community, caring for land. Like, I think that a lot of people just assume like, oh, there's like the parks department that cares for the land, and there's DCR, and they mow and maintain. Can you not do that? Just having trust that we'll get affordable housing. And I think that there's a level of active engagement that needs to happen for us to build the world that we want. Like, we already know that our government is kind of bought and sold. Like, people can buy their positions, and like the people with the biggest budget win the elections. And how do they get their money? Like, it's not always really nice. Like, sometimes people are not making decisions to benefit communities. They're making decisions to benefit corporations or developers or whatever. So I think that a culture of caring, a culture of active engagement needs to be developed. Like, it's not necessarily a common way of existing in community. A lot of people are just like, I just need to work. Like, there's just like a survival piece that needs to happen before you can start doing community work. If people could understand that the two are intertwined, like kind of back to the point about interconnection, like all of our systems are connected, our housing, our land access, food, how people work together in community, how people show up for each other. It needs to be more of a cultural way that we operate. And so I like to think about my public art projects as sort of like creating hubs of communication where people can have these conversations and be like, okay, this thing is going up down the street, or this project is up, this parcel is being developed, trying to build spaces where people can talk to each other about like, what is the plan, what is the percentage of affordability, what is the percentage of like the footprint that's going to be like preserved as open space, what's going to happen there. Just back to my art as like creating a space for conversations is super important. Yeah.
Awesome. I like that. On a side note, they call it affordable housing, which means that everything else is not affordable. So what the hell are we doing? Why are we doing this? And we should stop it. Stop it. Stop the corporations owning single-family homes, and let's just build. Shouldn't we just build it all affordable? It's conflicting because people have already invested in real estate, and so if you've already been flipping houses and doing that kind of stuff, and you're like, I'm invested in real estate, I'm making money, I have a house that's worth X amount of money, and then if all the houses drop in value, you're going to lose money, and that sucks. But hopefully we can find an alternative. If we just, from now on, just build all affordable housing across the board, and then somehow figure out how to get people who have houses that are worth way more than they should. $500,000 for like 200 square feet? What is that? That's not right. Anyways, moving on. Now, Magenta, you can talk about sustainability, climate change, equitable land access, and affordable housing, and being able to
actually afford something decent.
Yeah, I'll stick to the affordable housing thing because people can just look at bloomnetwork.earth. I'm going to plug it again because there's like really awesome examples of sustainability and like even templates for how to do stuff, whether it's like a personal action or a community thing. So I'll just let that speak for me on that topic. And then affordable housing. I just thank you for this prompt because I've been meaning to write a book about all the solutions that I've been learning about through organizing with Bloom. And the prompt about community housing, I have an outline for it, but the prompt about that helped me write the first chapter, which is on that. So thank you. And the first thing is just like build more housing. There's a lot of red tape in a lot of cities. Like, for example, that then make it cost prohibitive to build more housing. For example, sometimes there's a rule that you have to have a certain number of parking spaces. And because the land itself is so expensive, like that makes building just too expensive for the economics to work out. Or there's a lot of red tape, like many like permits and inspections and stuff that raise the cost. And so that means things don't get built. Sometimes there's NIMBY problems, like not in my backyard, zoning stuff, etc. But so if you can identify what the blocker is and then organize your civic policy to remove that blocker, that can enable more housing to get built, which keeps housing prices down, just like with how the market dynamics work. The second thing is cooperative co-housing. So where multiple people will go in and collectively buy an apartment building, and then they'll own the people who are like collectively own it. And then if you move out, then you sell your unit or your shares, and the person who moves in is a new owner. And so I think I'm trying to remember the different words for it, but like cooperative housing trusts, cooperative land trusts. I think that Ujima Project in Boston or Center for Economic Democracy probably has connections for people who do that. In the Boston area, there's another group out of New York. I think you would find them through the New Economy Coalition, which is kind of a lot of Northeast-based solidarity economy groups. You can do that also with farmland trusts. Similar idea. You collectively purchase land into a trust, and then it's preserved for farming in perpetuity. But it's also, you tend to have like community things happening around that. And then you have longevity of access to farmland. Apparently in the Northeast, there's like a lot of young people who want to farm, but they can't afford or find land to lease or buy. And then there are organizations that facilitate the financing around that kind of thing or help crowdfund purchasing land into a trust like that. Farmers Land Trust is one example of that. So those are good examples. And then the last thing I'll say is, and also sometimes those co-ops will own multiple units. And so once they get a flywheel going where the financing becomes easier and easier, then they expand and maybe own 5 properties. And then that many more people are able to like collectively own it. And it keeps the price from like escalating with like the landlord-renter dynamic. And the last thing I'll say is like, if people are, I don't know what it would take to get this there, but if people who are renting were always earning equity in the property, that would align the incentives so the renters are taking care of it, and it would mitigate this like landlord and renter divide where we're having increasingly class, like it's impossible to, like the percentage of income that goes to renting homes is like insane. So those are a few things I'm aware of that can address that.
Awesome. Do you want to touch upon sustainability and climate change and like what solutions you see are necessary for us to get to address these issues, or do you feel like just go to the Bloom Network?
Yeah, just go to bloomnetwork.earth and become a member. So then it like incentivizes you to do the things. I'm on this kick lately of like replacing everything I buy with things that can grow, and like I really want to take that really far, actually. There's no limit to how far I can take that. I think I'm going to try. So, yeah, and then lately I've been trying to research, like, if we dropped subsidies to fossil fuels, like, it's insane to me that flying is as cheap as it is, given the environmental repercussions. But yeah, I'm curious if I imagine like that would fuck with the economy for a while. Apparently, it's like a short term thing though. I've been trying to research this. So fewer subsidies, as in the government paying oil companies and energy companies to, extract more fossil fuels. And yeah, apparently, if we stop doing that, there's more and more evidence that it would incentivize more renewable energy to development, and energy prices would go up. But the counterbalancing thing that you do is then make sure that you're redirecting subsidies to low-income people or kinds of energy-intensive industries that would, it'd really be a problem if those like became too expensive, or they would completely drop, and that would be like not a good thing for everybody. So that's like one topic I've been interested in lately, and there seems to be more and more gravity around like, hey, would actually be a good idea if we did this. So I don't know what it'll take to get there, but yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, I always wonder. I'm just like, and people who make a lot of money probably wouldn't like this, but it's like if you make more money, then things cost a little bit more for you, and if you make less money, things cost a little bit less. I know, like you were talking about, flights are cheap, but they're not that cheap. Because I've been looking at some flights, so I'm just like, it really costs that much? But I guess it could be more expensive. I'm looking at a flight to Myrtle Beach in September because I got some sort of thing with Hilton. They're just like, hey, do you want to take this offer? It's this much money, and you get this many days staying, and you want to get on the call? And I'm just getting the cell. They're just like, you want to do this? I mean, the deal goes away when we get off the phone. I'm like, this sounds scammy. I don't know. And then I looked it up, and it's like, no, it's real. You just gotta sit through a 2-hour thing, and they're gonna try to sell you something, and just say no. Just say no. So at the end of those 2 hours, I'm going to say no because I don't want to buy what is it? A land share, timeshare. It's a timeshare because somehow we can share time, and that's fascinating. But no, I mean, it's timeshare where you share a place where you're like, I'm gonna be there during this time, and that's the timeshare aspect. But I don't want it, Hilton. I'm sorry, but I'm still gonna see it, and maybe you might change my mind. Maybe you'll get the opportunity because I have to give it to you. But yeah, the flight, it's like $300, and it was like $250 last time I checked, and I just wish I bought it then. But if we did the fuel situation, and the subsidies went away, it'd probably be a lot more money. But if the environment benefits from it, then, which it probably would because we'd fly less, then it'd be great. And then instead, I'll just drive to Myrtle Beach in an electric car that's got fuel cells, because I don't know about batteries. They're kind of bad. Fuel cells might be the solution. I don't know, but I'll have to do a piece on it. Anyways, that's my ramblings. So in between when people talk, I like to ramble a little bit. I don't know why. I got a problem, a little bit of a problem. So so we're gonna move on to stacks now. So and by the way, if you guys don't have anything to say about the environment and sustainability and equitable land access and affordable housing, you don't have to say anything. But if you do want to say anything, I mean, if all you want to say is these are things we should solve, then that's good enough. But if you have insights of your own that you want to provide, please do it.
Solid. This is great. I'm over here sitting and learning myself. So thank y'all again for being my encyclopedias. Like, again, these are like all topics that at some point in time I would be sitting down and just like digging through. It's again just finding the time. And of course, my work is based in the music business, where I don't think we've ever talked about this type of stuff. I've never sat in on conversations related to honestly any of these questions. So again, I appreciate you for literally creating the space and the platform to discuss all of this. I think anyone across any industry should like want to engage in these conversations, or should be able to, whether you have direct insight or not, because if you don't, you can still be surrounded by people who do. So thank you guys so much for enlightening me. I definitely have thoughts. I find it wild. I don't know who I was talking to about this, but the concept of branding and how extreme the human population has taken that concept. Like we've gone from not just branding products, but branding like water, branding and land now in the form of ownership. Like I remember I was on the T, and it was like there was just a bunch of things going on at the time, lots of things in my brain. And like every time I opened my eyes and blinked, like I was looking at something that had a brand name on it. Like someone's shoes had a brand name on it, someone's clothes. Like we've we brand streets like with the names and what, like we've found so many different ways to profit off of even just the natural earth itself and nature itself. And I think that's why, at least me personally, I've become so tied with nature in the past few months. I feel like that's the one place on earth that's not like you can look around and there's no like names on trees or like names on leaves, but it could get to that point. I wouldn't be surprised if we like went so far as to like, I don't know, one share of a tree is like one leaf, like which is really extreme. But nature's like the one place outside of like, you know, obviously people can own certain plots of land, but just like visually seeing nature and not seeing brand names and people's and companies in that space. So I am very invested in the conversation for sure. And I think stripping it all the way back again, I'm a very like in what is it introspective. There you go. Introspective. I'm a very introspective person, and like I said, I believe a lot of issues stem from the self and they stem from the mind. So much of your reality is literally like how you perceive it, and so at least how I see myself playing a role in sustainability and climate change. Like I think again before like bringing in the structural pieces, I think it also stems from like building a relationship with nature if you don't already have one. I was not this earthy, y'all, like to the point where my wardrobe, I'm always wearing something earthy. I love earth tones. My whole company is like branded in that way. Like I've gone to the extreme, but I wasn't always like that. Like I would just, you know, we of course we take it for granted. We're not socialized to think about nature in that way, to literally be like to know at all times that the floor that you stand on, the very floor that we stand on right now is supported by so much nature, right? I think it's creating spaces for people to feel that for possibly the first time. Like I would love to, I see a world in which I, you know, have a cabin in the middle of nowhere and I do writing camps there, writing sessions for songwriters. Like it's as simple as that. It's just helping or like doing one of those conversations, like group forum, group therapy like conversations and holding it like in the middle of nowhere, just where there's no like reminders of branding and marketing and someone trying to sell something to you. Like literally, I think honestly, there's no better place to create a space to exist than in the middle of nowhere, completely off the grid, in like just immersed in nature. So I think that could work for any industry. You could be the most corporate company and you could just decide one day to do like a retreat or like do a meeting in the forest. Like it's so, in my mind, things are very simple. To start just thinking about our surroundings in that way and helping people to build a relationship that's more than just like, oh, that's like scientific. That's cool if you know like what the trees do and what the plants do and what all these, how this ecosystem works. But like it would be great if the relationship could be emotional. I think once it gets below scientific and below physical into like an emotional relationship with nature, I think because then we start to care, which sounds egocentric, but humans are egocentric. Once they care about something, then they'll actually act. So if we can find a way, which I really haven't seen, I can't think, I'm trying to think of examples that I've seen. I'm sure they're out there, I probably just don't know about them, but like programs or spaces where an emotional relationship with nature can develop, because I think that's where the change can start. That's on that. affordable housing and equitable access to land. I'm gonna go down the route that I have been going this whole panel, which again is like a part because y'all. I feel like y'all are covering the structural pieces, which is also the pieces that I don't have too much knowledge on either. But if in my head, and I think Carolyn, you were touching on this, like obviously some of this has to do with government, some of this is in the hands of the government, some of this is in the hands of our representatives. Apart from that, though, like if the change does can't isn't happening there, I think it's finding ways to make noise within our community and tapping into like that active engagement with concepts like affordable housing and these things that we just attribute to like, oh, the government can handle that. That's like a decision that I can't really make right now. Like we I think storytelling is really important in both of those um spaces. Like if I don't know, we could even put together like just literally people who are affected by the lack of affordable housing, take them and like document their stories and have a way to like showcase this to our representatives, like again making all of this emotional, which is again playing to the ego. Even though I don't fully support that, it's knowing how the game works and using the tools of the game to destroy it, to deconstruct it. Playing to the ego in this case and helping them care. And if it's like they don't care, if that's like the underlying reason, then going back to like the transformative justice work that I was talking about earlier. Okay, why is affordable housing not important to you? Like, why does that not? Before saying like, oh, you just don't care about society, you are a bad person. Like, let's figure out where that's coming from. Is it because you like have never really have you been just have you had access to housing all of your life? Has that not been an issue that you've been faced with? Is that where like is there a little bit of ignorance at play? Like just playing into the emotional side of things and allowing representatives to see like actually see and feel the impact of what their decisions are making. And this can apply to literally any climate change, like just anything.
Awesome. I like that. I like what you mentioned about the idea of like getting a cabin, being out in nature. Nature is so important. Can't remember if it's Japan or China. Might be China. Like it's part of the corporate wellness like program is that if someone's not doing well, they're just like, get on a bullet train. You're going to walk through nature, okay? And that's part of their health plan. They're just like, all right, we're gonna go walk through nature for a bit, and it's healthy. I posted a
It's called forest bathing.
forest bathing.
Wow.
Okay. The the bullet train must be Japan. Yeah. Um, so yeah, forest bathing. It's very good for you. And this morning I walked barefoot on the ground because apparently that's important because if you don't ground yourself, um, like we like if you ever walk through a place and then you touch a doorknob and you get a shock, it's because you're not grounded. And so you built up this electrical charge, and then you touch something and then it's shocking. And I had a moment where I was at a hotel and no matter what I did, walking through the hall, I would just all of a sudden shock. Like I'd walk from one door down to my friend's hotel room, and I would touch the knob, get shocked, and so it was traumatizing because every time I did it, no matter if I was barefoot, wearing shoes, whatever, it just kept happening. So as I'm walking down the hall, I would just touch metal as I start walking down to discharge, so that by the time I got there wasn't a huge shock. It was just like tap, 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 tap. All right, fantastic. And that was my process. Sometimes you gotta roll with the punches or the roll with the shocks. In this case, I I also like what you were saying about storytelling. So like we just need it's emotional. It's an emotional situation. if we bring the emotions to it, and like, because there's people who they don't care about affordable housing because it's never been a problem for them. They've never lacked access to housing. There's people who don't care about universal basic income because it's never been a challenge for them to generate revenue. They've always had a job available to them. So like, there's people out there just like, I just get a job. Just get a job that pays better. It's okay. Just go get a job that pays better. Then you can afford things. Save money. Don't buy avocado toast. I don't buy avocado toast, and I still can't afford a house of my own. So I don't think that's the solution. But yeah, definitely these stories and narratives are important.
Yeah, and I will say, like, in an ideal world, it shouldn't have to take that to care, right? It shouldn't have to take people like being faced with like a story one on one to be like, oh, now I know why this is important. Like in an ideal world, we would all be predisposed to care about each other. We would all be predisposed, whether I know, someone in London, like that specific person, like regardless of whether they're in your immediate circle or not. But the reality is, we're not all predisposed to care, and even then, I'm not saying that with like uh, like a negative connotation at all. That's stems from a lack of perspective. A lot of these things, if I had to define life, which is like such a question, right? Life is perspective, because even any one answer to that would just be one person's perspective. It would be one particular lens through one particular reality. So it is the collection of many perspectives. It is the concept of perspective itself. And it's understanding like, okay, if you just have not, if that's a perspective you lack, then let's provide that perspective, which is why it's so important to like, you know, show like call your representatives and like talk to them and engage with them. Even though again, like it should be that like it would be great if representatives who did lack that perspective had the self-awareness to be like, oh, I lack this perspective on affordable housing. That means I cannot really make an informed decision on this. Let me go to my community and like seek, like it would be great, but that's an honestly an egotistic way of thinking that everybody has that. Not everybody has that self-awareness. Not everybody has that like innate relationship with nature. Not everybody has your perspective. So it's that's where the grace comes in. It's just having conversation with people and figuring out again like why you are the way that you are, and how you are. And then I think the issue comes when it's like with that perspective they then still choose to be ignorant. That's like a completely other thing, but at least give them the chance to make that choice. And then to your other point about just like the wondering, like the magic of nature. I was reading your blog. Magenta has a blog, and it is so beautiful the way that you phrase things. And there's one post where you were talking about just like how magical it was to garden and to like take care of something. It was just so, I'm paraphrasing. Y'all should go check it out yourselves, but it is so magical when you start seeing it. I didn't always see life in this way. The fact that like how weird and ironic is it that like some of our own body parts mirror that of nature. Like if you look at your hand, like our vein, like the lines in our hand kind of look like the veins on a leaf, for example, or like just like the bronchioles in our lungs kind of look like branches of a tree. Like weird, just ironic things like that. I remember there was like one day when I was at Berkeley, everyone left the classroom and I was looking at my hand just in the middle of the class. Everybody left, the lights were off. I think the teacher was still there and he was like, "What are you doing?" I sat there looking at my hand for like a solid 2 minutes because I've never seen my hand. Even right now, like I'm reminding myself how much detail is just in my hand, and I'm not just seeing the lines. Like I'm seeing like there's like these little other faint lines apart from the main lines. Like once you really just be present and you realize how certain things science cannot explain. As much as science, we've humans have figured out a lot of things, but once you really dig into the things that don't make sense, and then you're okay with the things that don't make sense, then you just realize it's something like magic, and it's so beautiful. And again, if we can get that emotionally connected to not just nature but a lot of these other issues, and I think we're cooking with grease.
Amen to that. Yeah. Fantastic. I'm just thinking about my hand now, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, huh, this is interesting. Because I know, like, oftentimes when people, like, do psychedelics, they, like, stare at their hand. So they're like, oh, okay, well, look at that now. And the fact that you're just, like, there in the class, the professor's probably like, I remember what that's like. Are you doing all right? You want some soft, soothing sounds? But no, you're just vibing. Yeah. So on to Jill.
I really like what you said, Stacks, about like creating an emotional connection when it comes to just like nature and stuff. Um, and I think a lot of humans need to start doing that. Just to kind of piggyback off of what you were saying, um, like I feel like there are like even um, like people who are like more religious with it, and just being like, we kind of look to like a human as God, and like, there are some people who look like God is Mother Earth, and we all live here, we're all humans, and we need to kind of just like treat this um, more as like our home and like where we come from, and we're all living beings. Um, but like aside from like a religious perspective, also, I think a lot of it does have to be more affordable when it comes to just like access to fruits and vegetables and being able to farm and do things like that. It's just like it's so frustrating, um, you know, just like how expensive it can be just for like organic food. And like when you go to different countries, like you can see how different other fruits and vegetables look compared to ours in America. And because it's like everything is so processed and like chemicals, and just how like crazy that is, where it's just like different countries besides ours, like just like how they treat the earth. It's just kind of mind blowing, and how expensive it is, like even just like for different I guess types of water, which is like wild. um and I think like we definitely all need to create more of a healthy connection with the earth, um and just treat it a lot like more like, we're all living beings, and we need to really take, climate change a lot more seriously than we do. And then that also kind of goes back to, I feel like, the leaders who are kind of in charge. But yeah, and then like as far as affordable like housing is concerned, um it's crazy, like even like kind of as of like recently, I get like kind of triggered when I hear affordable housing, because I feel like a lot of times like politicians or leaders will say that, but it's not really affordable. And it's kind of like, I feel like yeah, we all like want that ideally, but it shouldn't even be affordable housing, it should just be housing. And people will say that, and then instead we have all these high rises in our city and just constant building like everywhere. And um, even like people getting priced out of their communities and like where they've grown up, and having to be pushed out to like other places, and then those prices get raised. And it's just, yeah, it's just really crazy to me. And um, I feel like there needs to be, more affordable resources and access to things that I feel like are necessities to us. And yeah, just like, taking being creating more of a deeper connection. And then it kind of goes back into like, perspective and empathy and not taking things for granted when it comes to just like the food we eat and how we, do things and like live and get to work every day, and just looking at things in a little more in perspective to how like we live, and we're in the city, so there's like just like constant construction going on, like, everywhere, whether it's like, buildings or like even like, highways or the train, or it's just like constant. And it's like, how do we find ways to do that in a healthier way, or like a way that's not gonna make necessarily like our earth shatter, like, you know, and just like um, I love just being on this panel and like learning a lot more, because like Sax was saying, like we're more from like a performance perspective, and these conversations aren't really talked about enough. We did like a cipher one time with the Mass Autobahn. We had like a nature cipher and kind of like focused on that, and that was even really cool because it brought people together to discuss these kinds of things and just being more grounded with the earth. And I think that's just like so important, especially now. Because it's not only about us, it's about the youth too, and like they also live here and they're going to be our leaders one day, and just kind of figuring out ways to set them up for success. And just trying to create more of like that emotional connection and just come together and see like what changes can we make.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like what you were mentioning about how like people get pushed out of their land, and then they move somewhere else and it becomes unaffordable. Like there really needs to be a solution to this, and I think that the solution exists. It's gonna have to be we're gonna have to separate from the idea that land is something to make money off of. It's got to be like a universal right to every citizen to be able to get a pathway towards land ownership. I mean, the thing about high rises is that there's definitely alternatives to high rises when it comes to like making more housing. And there was this guy who he like did an experiment, I think in Montreal. But surprise, surprise, those houses are very expensive now because it was just the one build. So it's very famous. But I won't get too much to that tangent. But yeah, like we've all discussed this about the issues of land access, affordability. So clearly, it's a problem. And if you're watching this and you're a politician, then maybe you should figure out how to make it not a problem, how to do that. And then when it comes to construction in Boston, we know what the problem there is. Inefficiency. Like, come on. In China, they can build a new bridge in 10 days, maybe. Well, no, I mean, probably longer. But I'm just saying, in another country, they can build bridges really fast. And we're just like, how long is this going to take? About 4 years. Yeah, about 4, maybe. 4 or 5, maybe 6. Like, come on. We can build these faster. I don't know what the solution there is, but I think maybe some co-op construction situation where there's no hierarchy. We don't have to have the whole executive structure, and the only people getting paid are the people building it. Construction companies, you might not like that idea, so I don't know. Maybe I gotta talk to you, figure out what you would like. I just know what I would want, and that is for construction to last way less of a time. I'm like, oh yay, it's summer. Oh yeah, this construction everywhere. The highways, it's ridiculous. And yeah, I had a roommate named Nicholas. I'd be like, this is ridiculous, Nicholas. And so yeah, that stuck. So I say that. As you were saying, the youth, it's very important that we empower the youth. We got to create this intergenerational communication and collaboration between the old generation, the new generation, the next generation. There's all these memes and like these trending reels about it, where you got the millennial and the Gen Z and then the Gen Alpha and the boomers to the Gen X. There's Gen X and then there's the boomer generation, and we just all need to be working together. And so yeah, the youth is next. They're next up. They're the physical embodiment of the future. Like legitimately, they're the ones that are going to be the future. They're like walking around like, look at it right here. We got the future just sitting here, just chilling. And yeah, so education. We're gonna so we're about like at 4:15 right now. So we're pushing everything back about a half an hour if that's okay with you guys. So we're gonna do the networking and the wrapping up at about like 5:15. So this is the final question that we're gonna go through with everybody, and it's a bundled question. It's a bundle, like the good ones. Like if you got like HBO Max and Netflix and Hulu and Disney Plus, all for $5. That's not the price, but that'd be nice. That would be a nice bundle with no commercials. Okay, none of the commercials. All just $5. Make it happen. So that nice bundle is what you're like, how you taken what you're passionate about and pursued that and brought it to life, and how you sought out community and support for that, whether you found that community or you helped build that community or a little bit of both, and how you think the education system can change to better reflect what's actually necessary in order to succeed in taking your passions and making them into reality.
Yeah, I think like for me personally growing up, so like I guess like my education background was like I went to Cambridge Rindge and Latin when I was in high school, and I went to school. I was involved with like culinary class, so I originally like was gonna go to school for culinary. I turned into going to Newberry College for hospitality, so I have like a hospitality background. And then like, you know, I want to say maybe like 2.5 years in, I decided to leave college. I went to like esthetician school because I wanted to get involved with like kind of more of a resort aspect of it and like have different trades involved. And I was in my 20s and I thought I knew everything, so I was like, I'm already in the industry, I don't need to go through school anymore. And the majority of my family was mad at me. But as I got older, then like I decided to get back into like hospitality a little bit again. And I started like working with pets at one point. So I was in like the pet industry and learning different trades. And I think that's really important, is to not necessarily be like, this is what I want to do. And it's okay to like change your mind throughout life. I think a lot of times, like, I've had so many ideas, and a lot of times like in society it's like, okay, you need to go to school to be a doctor or a lawyer or be in IT, and that's where you're going to get money, and life doesn't always work out that way. And I think there are other what's the word I'm thinking of? Other jobs, and there are all different types of um, you know, things we need from different people. And yeah, like, and now I'm rapping, so I would have never, like, honestly expected to be doing what I'm doing now, being a hip hop artist in the nonprofit space. Um, and learning different things and meeting different organizations and other grassroots organizations in that space. So I think, as far as our education system goes, being more open to different ways of thinking, and different people learn different ways also. Like, I had an IEP when I was in school, um, and I'm like kind of, I guess, more of a visual learner. So I have to like really see something or someone doing something in order for me to pick it up, and then like um, I can like go from there and just like really do my thing. So I feel like with the education system, them being more open to trade schools and kind of pushing that aspect of education, and not like just the traditional structural way it's been um, for so long. And also just like um, as far as like I've done with Bridgeside, being in spaces like, we've been to high schools, we've been to we went to like Longy School of Music, and teaching folks about like the history of the cipher, and or like just like even like freestyling courses, um, being more open-minded to different forms of education, not just this necessarily like traditional way and like this is how it has to be. So I think the educational system should be a lot more open-minded, and educating themselves that there are other resources of learning, and kids also seeing that they can, um, they can, if they wanted to, be in a music space or a performer, and it not necessarily be what is it? The poor man's dream. Even though a lot of the times, it is harder to, just be an artist. Like, I have 2 jobs, but I'm also doing my passion right now, which I really love and I'm really grateful for. And seeing there are ways to um, be able to do what you want and what you love. Like I said, like I never, my father was a jazz musician, and my older brother was in the hip hop space. So I personally never thought like music was a thing for me. I felt like that was taken by other family members, and when I was younger, like it was definitely like glitz and glam, something I wanted to do, but it wasn't like a job or something I could um, live off of. And now, um, I got involved with music in my late 20s, and I never really saw me being organizing a space in my community, and it involving music and me educating people um, in certain aspects when it comes to performing, or just getting involved in my community in that way as a thing. Um, so, and just me having different experiences um, between like being in a hotel background, a restaurant background, and then being in a dog daycare, and then being at rap shows, like, um, and things of that nature. So, I think it takes a lot of open mindedness and just a lot of different ways of learning is possible. And yeah, I think just like broadening the scope of like what education is and what that looks like. Um, and just going back to the youth and like them seeing that and witnessing that. there's a really cool organization called the Hip Hop Transformation, and I think they're not only in some Cambridge public schools. I think they're out in Boston also, and they do like I believe after school programs with kids when it comes to like performing, and at the end of the year they'll put on like a big show. And there's also another organization I met, Beats, Rhymes, and Life, and they incorporate mental health awareness with the youth. And like they have like a really cool bus that's solar powered that has like a studio in it. It looks like the studio like I go to, like a professional studio, which is like super dope. And just like giving, yeah, the mobile studio, yeah, it's super dope. And they did a over at Harvard Grad School, which is where I met them at a hip hop conference by Hip Hop X. They did a freestyle workshop that was really cool, and it helped me too. And like another thing, just learning different ways of freestyling and different methods. Like I think it's just really important. Just knowing that there are different methods of learning, um, different outlets of being able to express yourself. So just kind of like changing the narrative of what education looks like, and showing our youth that there's different possibilities of um, what that looks like in the end game when you get older, and different occupations. So yeah, that's my take.
Awesome. I like it. Um, yeah. So like you got into like you saw music as your like it's your passion you wanted to get involved in. You saw you're like, oh, that's for other people, not for me. And then in your late 20s, you got into it, and then you found your community, and now you're like you found. I assume you found your community by getting involved and just getting started, and seeing like getting involved in ciphers, and now you're actually participating, building that community, and showing the youth that hey, here's something that you can do. So that's awesome.
Yeah, and like, sorry, turned off my mic for a second by accident. Um, yeah, and like, just FYI, I'm not saying it's not hard work. It's a lot of hard work. But yeah, I think it definitely is possible. And also, um, just like being super supportive and not like the shame of what education looks like, and how it's just like strictly like you need to go to college. And like, not saying college isn't important. Like I think now in hindsight, college is really what you make it. um and I think that's like, my college experience. I didn't really always take it the most seriously as I probably should have. Um, but just like also knowing that, like, there are options. And I think, like, honestly, like, personally, I've gained the most confidence in the music space versus just like going out throughout life. I haven't always been the most confident person and believing in myself. And I always felt like growing up, I was really dumb, and like just having like people making me feel like I wasn't smart enough to do something. So I kind of always had that like narrative in my mind that I was dumb because I learned a certain way, or I didn't, always like kind of follow the rules. And then once I got into the music space and the nonprofit space, like people really like building me up. Um, I didn't always feel like, I never thought I would be on a panel. Like I sometimes just like struggle with speaking or thinking and like processing my thoughts. Um, so just being in an environment with people who like really build you up, and just like knowing it's okay to learn differently, and you know, just having that support is like also a huge thing. So not being so traditional, I think, is important.
Awesome. Thank you. So Stacks question again, and anybody tuning in, well, I mean, like if you watch it live and if you're in here now and you weren't here before, this is Talking Solutions. We're talking solutions with people that produce solutions. So Stacks, to reiterate the question, you know, how'd you how did you take what you're passionate about, pursue it, find the community or build the community around it, and how can the education system better support that?
What a loaded question, huh? Firstly, thank y'all for being vulnerable in this space and allowing me. I keep saying thank you, but like I walk with gratitude all the time, and I don't take any single living thing for granted. So thank you for sharing all of y'all's stories. Um, I'll start with my story, I guess. The journey to this point has been wild, y'all. And it's still early days, 2 years into adulting according to society standards. I started out as an artist. I was a full on creative, was doing the whole, releasing things and music videos and booking myself. I was a self managed artist for a little while, and I thought I was going to do that for the rest of my life. That's why I went to Berkeley, because that was the whole vision. And then halfway through Berkeley, that's when I started reading those books that I mentioned. I started really deep thinking and deep diving into myself and what I was creating. And as much as I enjoyed performing, I realized that there was nothing I could have done under the spotlight that would have matched the level of impact I have being behind the stage. And so I completely switched. It was like the most 180 decision to stop being an artist and a creative in that way, and being more on the management side, A&R, talent development. And since then, I've kind of stayed on that trajectory with some creative outlets on the side. Like I still do some spoken word here and there. I'll sing occasionally if it's like an emergency, but I will always give like every recommendation in the book before I do that. But I love just being a resource for event organizers, especially if it's community oriented. But the whole concept of like the idea of me even like having a company and deciding to be an entrepreneur didn't come until late last year. So this is all very, very recent for me. And that came after I went to LA for the first time and was working with a boutique management company called Songs You Like. And that was like the first time I was ever exposed to like the commercial music industry in the US. And it just opened so many doors for me. So many light bulbs went off. And so I came back to Boston and was like, I'm gonna do this. But I want to do it my way. And so a lot of these ideas as to like what my brand is rooted in, like that's literally why I named it. Like it's rooted in a lot of my core values, including just like self-discovery and prioritizing well-being and humanity and walking with intention and being original and authentic and keeping it raw and real, like all of those things. So it's really just how I am. Like how I show up in any room is how I show up in every room. And I sort of seek those qualities in the people that I work with, and create spaces for all those, for people to exist, as an artist, as a human being, all of your different layers. So that's like a snapshot of my story. All that to say, I would not. First of all, education. Of course I wouldn't know anything that I know now had not come from someone, had it not come from something. Even if it wasn't a verbal explanation of something in the way that education usually is, it's usually verbal, and sometimes visual. I saw something. I saw some process take place, and I learned. I just lost my train of thought. Where did that go? Oh my god. Train, come back. In the same way, oh, yes. Okay. Yeah, I don't like I'm so humble when it comes to like I don't think at any point in life where we've mastered anything or we're like professionals or experts. Again, we don't even know what we don't know. And that the amount of information that lies out there just to know like I know somebody who gets overwhelmed when they enter a library because it's like there's so many things that they need to know but they can't like sit there and read every single book. Like it's insane. I'm so grateful for all the people who bestowed knowledge upon me. I see it again as storytelling, going back to storytelling. That's really what education is. I love the concept of education being that. Like people who, you know, have dedicated their lives to studying something, have dedicated their time and energy and are so gracious to create spaces where they can share that. And even better when those instructors and teachers and professors are passionate about that. And it's not just, you know, for the sake of getting, you know, the money and having a job. Education system. I think the number one thing for me, I think entrepreneurship is a fancy way of saying taking your passions and making them into reality. Your exact question. That whole process is entrepreneurship. I think our education system, at least in the US, could do a better job at allowing people to find that. Like, not even just do that, but find that. Because that's a whole process in and of itself. You finding your passion is you finding yourself. Those two processes are very much intertwined. I would have loved to, like, when I said I read those books, right? And I just was in my room reading self-awareness books, finding myself. Literally, that's what I was doing. I did that not from any book or textbook that the school gave me. I had access, this is a privilege. I understand that this whole process comes with privilege, right? Having access to books, knowing how to read English, having access to technology. Some of the books I read were on my laptop. I did research. Like, I had a roof over my head when I did all these things. Like, you can't, if I were to take any of those books and hand it to, let's say, a homeless person right now, like, they wouldn't be able, first of all, that would be assuming that they know how to read, but two, they're not conditioned to see the value in that information because their number one value is survival. Like, if we're talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you know, like, we have to make sure in order to reach the self-actualization process that, you know, survival and all of those like crucial essential human needs are serviced before we can even think about that. So it's like, I think creating spaces for people to find themselves, again, making sure that all of those other needs are, you know, all set. Because again, like, if your child's coming in and you're coming from like an abusive household, there's just like any part of your life is detrimental to your survival. Like, you're not coming into class with like the most open mind. You're not like receiving that information to the fullest potential. So even for a course like that to be successful, we have to kind of make sure that those needs are met. And then once people are able to engage with information like that and a process like that that's very introspective, I think people can then find the things that they're passionate about and turn that into reality. But it stems from self-discovery, and it also stems from just, like Jill was saying, like, simply put, just knowing things are possible. Like, I think, as weird as it sounds, like, sometimes you really don't know something exists unless you see it. Like, sometimes seeing is believing, in the same way that, like, that's why I'm so grateful to my ancestors who, during the hardest times in history, I'm African American. I'm a very, very proud Cape Verdean. Like, there were visionaries who saw something that was possible, and I don't know how they did this when it was like the cloudiest of times, like when there was like no light in sight. in the tunnel. Like they somehow they still saw that, and like now I'm privileged to be in a space, especially like in the music industry, where I'm a rarity. Like this is not normal. Like black people being in these kinds of positions is not was never part of the plan. Like me even just being here and like my community being as alive and as successful as we are was never part of the agenda. I'm so grateful just to see other women of color in the music business, other women of color in the music industry in positions of power. Like Sylvia Roan, oh my God, like Erica Coulter, there are people doing the things that I see in my head. That in as I'm going through the entrepreneurship process has been so helpful in having that kind of guide and mentorship. So again, just allowing especially kids, like it would have been great to know early on that I could create things. I never went to school and they said, you know, you don't have to attach yourself to a company actually. You don't have to like work for someone. You can literally create your own thing. And you can be good. Like you could be successful. You could build your own empire. That kind of just like creative work and vision building, if that could be incorporated, like more incorporated into our education system, because you have people, you know, not everyone is a leader. Like I believe everyone has leadership qualities and everyone should be tapping into their own leader, but in terms of like structure wise, not everyone's meant to be a leader, and that's okay. That's why we have leaders and followers. We have, you know, people who need like a vision to attach to versus people who plant the seed for that vision. And I'm blessed that I have this vision that I've planted, but I don't even feel comfortable going around saying I'm the CEO founder. I'm the sower. That's it. I just sowed the seed. But it takes literally an entire village to contribute to that seed and nourish it and plant it and make sure that it stays well. But I've never had, and you know, there are entrepreneurship courses, of course. Like I'm pretty, you know, my college had those. At the time, I didn't choose to take advantage of those resources, and I know many other schools have those resources. But like especially just like middle school, like elementary, like as early as possible, allowing students to know that they can create and they can be and they can create like actual things that can stand on its own. I think that would be great. Like I went to BU, Boston University, and they had this event, entrepreneurship event, and it was just a bunch of students like pitching their business ideas, and they, you know, based off of their pitch, based off of their application, they would have the opportunity to be granted money from the college to fund that business idea while they're in college, like while they're studying. That's so beautiful to me, to like create something while you're studying the thing and then be able to have it be funded by, like, it's just that I was like shocked that day. I'm honestly still shocked. But yeah, like having something like that where we encourage people not just to like you were saying, like go to school to do this and like be a worker. I think especially in America, that's the mentality. You know, there's a lot of things that they don't want you to know. They don't want you to know that, you know, you can be an entrepreneur and just like, yeah, there's taxes. There's a lot of like loopholes that they don't really. That's another thing, financial literacy. Like, you know, once you, but I get it. I get it. That's the thing. Like, I can play devil's advocate. I get why you wouldn't want the people to know the cheat code, but if we can figure out the people who don't want us to know the cheat code and figure out why they don't want us to know the cheat code, that'd be great. I'd love to have a conversation with you. Let's chop it up.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. So I've lost. Looks like we're just losing trains right and left. It's a good thing that we don't conduct actual trains, because that would be an emergency. Yeah, 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 yeah. So if they're losing trains, it's a problem, because there's people that just disappear and they're gone, and you're just like, How did that happen?
Well, great thing these trains only have thoughts on them, which
Yeah.
could return. They have
Yeah, they'll
potential
come
to
back.
return.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess that would be very interesting if you were just like, so today the B line just disappeared, and a bunch of students, we have no idea where they are. Stay tuned. Hopefully they're just in stasis in another parallel dimension, and they'll be back soon. Yeah, with new knowledge, and they'll be like, guys, we just found out that we're all traveling on a spherical planet, traveling through space, and there's not a lot of other ones like that, so we should all come together. That's probably the knowledge they'd come back with. They probably already have that knowledge. There's a lot of the youth today that they're just like, hey, we should come together as people. So Magenta. Do you need me to reiterate the passion, finding community, or building community, and how the environmental system, that's another one. But the education system, how that one can change to better suit for people for reality, rather than just making a bunch of workers for an industrial system that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, I think they're actually kind of connected for me. One reason I sought out community was when I first moved to San Francisco. I landed in a horribly abusive relationship, and when someone one of those person's exes actually pulled me out of it. She's like, "Oh my God, I should have thought he's doing the same thing to you. I'm sorry. Leave, just leave. No, he's not gonna shoot your new person." But just the types of psychological abuse I experienced, and that person's background, I just sought out political education to understand what had happened to me. How is the world this way that a person could be so lost in such a deep hole and so hurting other people, and he can't find his way out of it? And that has been the case for a long time. So yeah, I first sought out community of people who had a deep political education about the history of the U.S. I grew up on a farm in the Midwest in the middle of nowhere. Everyone was white. The reservations were very segregated from settlers, and yeah, so that was my first experience of reaching out to community to be well, to find my own wellness, and because I couldn't stand for it's not right that the world is this way. And so I learned a lot through that and began organizing artists and political activists to trade skills and coordinate with each other. And then gradually okay, and where are the people who have the healing knowledge for processing this really heavy historical and intergenerational trauma that we're talking about when we're trying to find our way and assert our way out of. That group was primarily taught women to be leaders in social movements, and especially lift up the voices of queer women of color, because they see through multiple layers of oppression and so see clearly what needs to change for people to be okay. And then yeah, from there I ran into what is now Bloom Network. At the time it was called Evolver Network, and it was this multi-movement organizing, who has what pieces of the solutions that we need, and how can we collaborate to, those people are all having transcendental experiences through psychedelics or meditation, yoga. And it was also around the time of Occupy. It was 2008 when that network started. And so just the political reality and the large scale movements, Arab Spring, this kind of thing, we were all watching that happen, and all right, this is just going to keep getting worse. So let's organize and mobilize together to skill each other up. And we're seeing in our visions through the medicines and different kinds of things, how society could be different. And so we had between the social network, we were talking about it, and we get together in person and do it. So that's been my process of building community. I became a community organizer in the Bay Area, and organized events for people. I did this series called Hive Mind, and so yeah, it was both like with all of us really. It was like our personal healing experience interwoven with like societal responsibility and approaching that in a collective way, and through events and skill shares, and people form companies through that and cooperatives, and it's been really amazing to work as a networked like movement like that. And education wise, I wish that younger education systems like taught people about their bodies more. Like, I don't know what percentage of people have back problems, but we're still have an industrial education system where you're like training people to be like mechanical workers, or we're like, we don't get taught like how to take care of your spine. Like, we're sitting in desks all day. We go to recess, right? But like, we're not taught about our physical bodies. People run into mental health challenges because they're not taught about like gut health and about the energy body. I mean, I don't know what the right words are for that, but we also don't learn about types of like psychological conditions to be cautious of, because like there are certain people who tend to hurt other people, and that's like their psychology is just that way, and that's something to be careful about. And yeah, so there's like really basic stuff that we don't get taught in school. Like, society is not oriented around wellness for children, like not just the education system, but I have one of our community organizers with Bloom Network is a child-friendly cities expert. So it's always fascinating talking to her, because she's always thinking about, how can we make sure that streets are comfortable for kids to be free and walk around in. There's an interesting, I need to find who put this policy forth and what the status of it is, but apparently in New Hampshire, it's really expensive to put kids through school. Like, it costs the state something like over $20,000 per kid per year for K through 12. And so some group was proposing, instead of that, let's give the parents directly, I forget, it was $7,000 or $10,000 per kid per school to self-organize it. And so you cut out the inefficiencies of some of the like legacy education system. It's easier to pay a teacher a living wage, like 60, 70K. You can get smaller school sizes. I guess New Hampshire has a lot of funding from the federal government for charter schools, but like public charter schools. So I thought that was interesting, because I think a lot of people in Bloom Network, like the main thing they care about is healthy futures for children. And that's like why we're all doing it. A lot of us are parents. I'm not a parent, but I would love to like at some point have all the take all the children. Like, the parents get a break. I get all the kids. We make art together and have fun for a while, and then they go back to their parents. But I think that'd be a fun like cooperative way to have education as well, where our work lives are structured so that we can educate the kids. They're more immersed in life. If they want to contribute to scientific research or some like real problem in the world, they can do that. Like, kids are smart if you give them a chance. And I had like similar to the experiences you were talking about, Joe, but on kind of the other end of the spectrum. Like, I read Lord of the Rings for the first time when I was 4. And so when I got to kindergarten, I opened up the book. It says, "See the dog run." I'm like, oh my God, the next 12 years of my life are going to be a complete waste of time. And that was completely true. And I think like the current education system we have is not set up to like allow self-actualization in all of the diversity and expression that we have as humans and collectively, and it could be so different. So it's really, just like experimental education models is something that I'm seeing happen in a lot of Bloom Network communities, and a lot of times it's like more integrated with like their local food system, with the arts, with like involving children in societal processes. So yeah, I'll shut up now.
No, that was great. That was great. You're a I don't know why the word is. I don't know if you're a wealth of knowledge. You're an infinite library of deep, wonderful. For some reason, the phrase "well of knowledge" comes to a well of knowledge. Is that the phrase? It's a well of knowledge, right? It's not what.
A what? Fountain of knowledge. Anyways, yes. So the tree of knowledge. It seems like you've eaten all of the fruit, all of it, and yeah, not in like so like the Bible. I can't get too much into the Bible, but the Bible, well, it's actually the Torah. It's in the Torah, the Old Testament, about eating an apple. Is that in the Bible? I know. I don't think it's in the Torah. I think it's the Bible ones. The Bible, but they ate an apple, and then they got here, and they're like, oh, we're here now. I don't think it's a negative thing. I mean, the whole story of just like don't eat don't eat from the tree of knowledge because you need to be ignorant and just walk around naked. I don't know. I don't know what the message there was for that, but I think eating from the tree of knowledge is the right move. You got to eat the knowledge. You don't want to be ignorant, just walking around, just like not knowing anything. It's like, oh well, life is just simple, isn't it?
Can I challenge that though? I'm gonna play devil's advocate. Wait.
Oh, you're gonna play devil's advocate?
Yeah. I think if we look at it in a different way, it was I kind of agree with the sentiment of them not, like the whole point of them not getting them to try to not eat the fruit. I think this is about to get so like philosophical. I think we've been conditioned to like research everything and find the answer to everything to the point where I think a lot of people overwhelm themselves with the lack of information they have. Like, especially with science, we have a whole award for people who discover things. Like, we have to know how this works and how that connects with this, and we need to know what the atom does. Like, we have like become so obsessed with knowing that I think we've made ourselves even more uncomfortable with uncertainty. So I actually think if we talk about Adam and Eve, I think the whole point was for them to, yes, they would be living in ignorance, but just being and existing. Like, we don't necessarily have to know. Of course, there are like certain things scientifically that have benefited our life, like knowing, marijuana exists and like natural psychedelics exist, and like a lot of these oxygen comes, like a lot of it has been helpful. But I do like wonder what a world would look like, and it didn't exist at one point when we were so early on in civilization, in ancient civilization. We didn't know as much as we know now, and it was fine. We were just in the now. What do you think?
Well, my thoughts on it are a bit different, but the thing that I can agree with is I agree with the path. I agree with being able to sit and be comfortable with just being and unknowing. But I also do, on one hand, I believe that all these religious texts have agendas that were written at the time of the people who wrote it, and there was a reason they wrote it, and they had some sort of agenda for the people at the time, and that's why it's like written like that. And then as far as knowledge, I definitely think that people are too that people get anxious about not knowing. But what I'm also seeing is that we're seeing a lot of people just like rejecting scientific knowledge and like being and just being like, I don't trust this expert. And then you got YouTube videos that are just like they're all lying to you. You need to find the truth on my channel. It's on my channel. That's the truth. But everyone else is lying. So see you next week. To tell you what's real. So I definitely I agree there. I agree there with like the like being able to be settled in the unknown. And I also think that the pursuit of knowledge and information and understanding everything is great and wonderful, because that's who I am though. I'm like, how does this thing work? Let's take it apart. All right, let's put it back together. And sometimes you put it back together and you're like, well, that's not right. I guess I can't put it back together again. Kind of like Humpty Dumpty. But I've never tried to put together an egg. So after I broke it, I kind of just like wipe it up and throw it in the trash or the compost. If I have compost, I'll just wrap it up, throw it in the compost, and be like, well, that egg's broken. Next egg. Yeah. So
that's my 25,000 cents. So last but certainly not least, yes,
Yeah.
is your mic on?
I think
Is it on
my
now?
mic is on.
Wonderful.
So, I'm glad you mentioned the Adam and Eve story. I'm thinking in the context of this question about education, how we learn, how we, you know,
Pursue passion, find community, build community.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it comes back to storytelling. To come back to what you were saying, and I think that the creation story, like, how do we create? What do we create? Why? Like, how does creation work, right? And this story, this Adam and Eve story of that has to do with creation, is so much about our relationship with nature. And in our society, nature is kind of regarded as like wild and something to be tamed, and that's what the Adam and Eve story sort of says, is like, they're all happy and like, had like fig leaves covering their private parts and like didn't care. Or no, that's what happened. No, they realized they were naked and they're like, oh, I need a fig leaf to cover my private parts, like they couldn't just be like,
Yeah. And God's like, what is this fig leaf? Why are you wearing it? What did you do?
And then they had to leave. They couldn't hang in the garden. They couldn't live there if they had eaten this apple of knowledge and were banished, right? And then the world was like hostile, like outside of this garden of safety, like this idea that like nature is hostile and that you have to like, toil and fields, and it was so awful. Kind of like painting this picture of like a relationship with nature that was just like fraught with struggle. And the creation story of North America, of Turtle Island, is this story of Sky Woman falling. It is another story of like relationship with nature, and it's just like it's based on care, right? The relationship. Here, I'll tell the story to my best of my ability. And this is sort of paraphrased from Robin Wall Kimmerer's telling of it in Braiding Sweetgrass. So basically, the gods all lived up in the sky, and then there was like a crack, and a woman fell from the sky. But as she was she kind of like knew she was about to fall, and she's like, crap, I'm falling. She like was able to or she had like a bag of seeds in her pocket, a little satchel of seeds, and she fell. She was falling, and she was like, screaming and fall. And then these geese like saw her, and they were like, oh my gosh, there's like a woman like falling from the sky. And they're like, all right, let's help her out. Let's get together and spread our wings out and catch this woman. And they did. They caught her. And they're like, all right, cool. There's water below. The world was just water. And so they're like holding up this lady, and they're like, all right, we can't really like hold the lady and flap our wings at the same time. And then this turtle came up and was like, I got you. Like, you can land here on my back. And so she landed, was placed on the back of this turtle. And then the turtle, she was like, okay, thank you. She was full of gratitude, right? For the geese and for the turtle. And then, the turtle was like, all right, I don't know how long I can like tread water with this lady on my back. And then this otter came up and was like, let me see where the land is. Let me see how far down the land is. Maybe we can like find some land. So the otter went down and like grabbed some land, and came back up. But like it was so far down that by the time the otter came back up, they had died. The otter died trying to get land, to find where the land was for this woman. And like, anyway, they found this little bit of land and put it on the back of the turtle. And Sky Woman was like so devastated but grateful, and just thank you, like cried tears, and took the land out of the hand of the otter and put it on the back of the turtle and cried tears of gratitude. And and her gratitude, like the turtle kind of like spread out and formed actual land, and her tears watered the soil, and she was like, oh my god, I have these seeds, and she planted the seeds. And that's how the world started. It started from these relationships, and it started from this gratitude, and she just danced and sang, and things grew, and that was her responsibility, to care for the animals, to care for the birds, to care for all the things growing, because they had all given her life. And so there was this dynamic relationship between all of the elements. And like that story, I'm like, that's the creation story that I want to live my life by, because it's beautiful. It's coming from a place of love and joy and gratitude and feeling and knowing that connection, right? It's not like Eve messed up. There was rules. She messed up. She ate the apple. She got banished. She was like Adam had to toil and then like didn't even like her. Or no, there was Lilith. Anyway, and Lilith was a demon. Anyway, there's all these stories of these complex relationships that are coming from this place of like fear and trying to defend yourself and fight for your life, and it's just a completely different orientation that I don't think is helpful to live a happy life. And to if you're leading from your passions and instead of your fears, I think the indigenous worldview makes a lot more difference or more sense. I also think about the education system in terms of like, what is it really setting people up for? Is about making money. It's about pursuing your passion. It's about like being part of a system, right? And I think that, I went through the whole system. I went to like all public schools. I went to UMass, Mass Art. I'm like a super like Massachusetts education system graduate of Newton Public Schools and UMass. And anyway, and it's just like I did it because you had to do it, because that was how my family system was set up. Super privileged family where it was just like expected that you like do all the education and then you get a job, right? And I feel like I graduated from college and I was like, like what do I really want to do? So I feel like I had to unlearn. I had to go through this process of unlearning and then learning what I was passionate about. And I learned I was an artist when I was like 28 because I couldn't draw when I was a kid. So nobody ever told me that I was an artist and that I should like do art because I couldn't really draw. So I kind of like was a super late bloomer as an artist, and then like, oh, now I have to like figure out how to make a living doing what I love doing. And if I had grown up with financial insecurity, I probably would never be an artist. So it's kind of like really hard, I think, for if you're not a prodigy, to be able to like be comfortable with that not knowing of like, how am I going to like earn a living? How am I going to like create my own creative life? Because it's not like there is no linearity. So I kind of feel like I was able to take risks because of my privilege, and then pursue all of these like entrepreneurship programs. I still don't have a mentor. I wish there was more mentorship, I guess, like from the very, very beginning, like have little kids, like I want to be a like whatever, and then you can have like somebody to like talk to them about what it's like to have that job. Like I wish that I had a mentor. I hope, I mean, hopefully, or I just plug for more mentorship programs and opportunities, or just have that integrated into the school system. So I think that's kind of
Awesome. So you found your passion after going through everything. You're like, I went to school, went to college, and then you found your passion in art, and then and you feel like there should be more mentorship. Um, cool. So have you? Um, I was gonna ask how you found, like, how did you find your community? How did you find or build community?
I would say that, I mean, I've had so many different iterations of community. I mean, now I'm building community around Nico and Nico's school and our like physical neighborhood, just people who live nearby and care about gardens and the public caring for public open spaces um, and just like having a vibrant community. So right now it's really more about like geography and the school. But when I was first starting out, when I'm like, oh my god, I'm an artist. I actually started out as an art administrator, and I was like building community through just like all of the different networks and all the different artist groups, and just convening people, calls for artists, artist info sessions, like going to art shows. I would like go to everything. Just showing up. So much of building community is just showing up. Oh, you're doing a thing, I'm there. Now that I know you guys, I'm totally gonna come to your things. I'm psyched. And and telling people what you're doing, that's the thing I struggle with. I'm really bad at promoting myself. But finding people who are good at that, and that's what they do, and being like collaborating and working together, trying to build a system where you're not trying to do everything. There's so much like in our society where you're just expected to like figure things out and do everything on your own. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. It's just like, no, this is like a pathway towards burnout. So finding the people who love the things that you don't love, and building teams, and and making sure it's fun, like checking in, like, is this fun? Am I having fun? What would make it more fun? Right? And that's your point of reference. Nico's been very patient, everybody.
We're about to wrap. So Joy, is everything looking good on the cameras? All right, fantastic. All right, so we are a little over time. We're at 5:42 right now. We'll do a concluding. Any last words that you want to say? And we'll start down at Jill, move her way here. Any last words of wisdom that you want to provide people? Anything you want to say? Let's keep it to like we'll do like one sentence is not enough. Let's say like 3 to 5 sentences. If you can think in sentences, I can't. So that might be a struggle. But imagine what that would be like, and then the knowledge to the world.
Keep it short. Anything is possible. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your perspectives. I loved this. Thank you, Jonathan, for holding this platform for all of us to talk solutions and share our stories. If you guys want to, look up my organization or anything, you could follow us at the Bridgeside Cipher at Bridge Cyph, Bridge CYPH. We have a bunch of fun videos of all different humans sharing their stories. You can also find us at Cambridge Hip Hop Collective. We have our events usually once a month. So we're hopefully going to be at the Central Square dance party this coming Friday, the 28th. If not, you guys should just come to Central Square because it's going to be super fun that day. We're going to be dancing in front of City Hall. But yeah, that's where you guys can follow us. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. And yeah, check out our community. Again, I'm Just Jill, and I'm also a hip hop artist. I recently released, or last year I released a album called Womanhood, just sharing my perspective as a woman in hip hop, and my personal struggles and growth over the past few years. So check me out too. I'm at Silly Jilly X3. That's kind of like the old school aim heart. not silly Jilly times 3, but X3. But yeah, thanks again, Jonathan. And yeah, like I've known Jonathan. Jonathan has seen my growth as an artist and just a human since like 2018, 19, which is really special. So thank you again, Jonathan, for giving me and us this platform to speak our minds.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. Yeah, so we're going to keep going down the line. And yeah, just let them know also, just like Jill did, let them know how they can connect with you. Because I know not because like you've got the Instagram for Bloom, but you're more on LinkedIn, right? But we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Stacks.
Word. I think I'll leave y'all with the reminder that, um, like this panel was about, encompassed around peace and how to push for a better society, right? I think this is in Massachusetts, of course, easy to find people who, are like minded in this way, and everyone in this room kind of, I'm hoping is feeling that same way. Reminder that, of course, not only are people not aligned in that same way, but some people don't know what peace is. Some people don't even know what peace feels like. Like they've never been at peace with themselves. They haven't been at peace with their, if they have traumatic experiences, they haven't been at peace with the community that they've been, whether blood or chosen. Like some people don't know have never experienced peace. So if you are a peacekeeper, like I feel like I like to call myself a peacekeeper. I feel like we're all peacekeepers here. If you consider yourself a peacekeeper, and it's okay if you don't, we're all on our own individual journey to finding peace. So don't rush it either. Like if you're not ready to like be in that position where you can expose somebody else to peace, then don't push it. But if you consider yourself a peacekeeper, keep an open mind that you could be the gateway to light for a lot of people. And it can start with one person. Like some days my meetings are centered around business. Other days it's just me getting to know people and hearing other people's stories. So yeah, just stay open minded. And don't of course sacrifice your own light. Like it's not anyone's job to, you know, radiate somebody else. But if you feel so called in the same way that I feel called, I feel that's genuinely part of my purpose. I don't think I'm here on this earth for any other reason. And if I'm not doing that, whether it's through the music business or literally whatever I'm doing with my life, I could just wake up tomorrow and decide to not be a manager anymore. But I know whatever I'm going to be doing is going to be rooted, ironically, in that same sense of just, again, walking in light and love and trying to leave people at least 1% better than you found them. So yeah, that's me. I'm Stacks. I'm based here in Boston, so please don't be shy. Like hit me up. You can Instagram's probably the best place for me. 6 foot Stacks. That's STAX. I'm 4'11" in real life, but 6 foot in energy. You feel me? Hit me. Like let's talk. It can be music business. It can be just about life. I'm all for it. And Jonathan, thank you so much again. I want to highlight what Carolyn said about showing up because a lot of the events I go to, Jonathan's been there, and that's how you know when you start seeing like the same faces at these community-oriented events. That's how you know y'all are aligned. And I kind of knew it since like our first conversation, which was at like another community event. I was not expecting to meet you, so like this was very intentional. This whole panel has been intentional. These specific panelists, this entire room of people has been very intentional. And of course, everyone watching, if you are watching, very intentional. I appreciate y'all.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for being here. Now, Magenta.
I don't have anything more to say, but you can find me and the awesome community I've been talking about at bloomnetwork.earth. We're on Instagram as Bloom Network, bloom like flowers, and Twitter, our Bloom Network. And yeah, I also have a personal website, magewrites.com, where I write and share some of my cute art And yeah, I'm working on, like I said, a book about solutions and a whole other body of our work around sci-fi characters. And yeah, just also echo the thanks. It's been really a pleasure to meet all of you. This is the first time I've spoken at a thing since I moved to the East Coast in 2019. So I really appreciate the structured conversation and getting to know fellow creatives and community builders, and just really thank you for all of that you're doing and all of the consciousness that you shared with me today that I hold in my heart really and treasure. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Echoing the thanks to spend this time with you all and for everybody's patience. I've never brought Nico to a panel discussion, and I felt that it was so odd to have a child on my lap and over there and doing so active, and then being present with you all and like hearing you and sharing. I felt like oddly able to do that. So that's cool. And I could see Nico's reflection in the camera while I was talking, and he was making all of these really weird faces. So yeah, I just never imagined I would be like having this sort of like reflective series of thoughts and sharing and listening with such a wiggly child's part of it. So I just appreciate everybody's acceptance of Nico's presence and all of it. Yeah, thanks, Nico, for bringing your energy.
Thank you, Nico.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, my Instagram is at Carolyn L Creative, CarolynL Creative. My website that I really need to update is carolynl.net. And yeah, I can't wait to continue following y'all and showing up at things. And thank you so much for holding space for us to chat.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure. Carolyn, Magenta, Stax, Jill, thank you guys so much for coming out here. And we got on a call before this, and they were all on the call and chatting and connecting, and then there's a green room here. I don't think it's actually green in there, but I think there's some. I gotta check if there's green in there somewhere, but I hope there is, because I like it when they do stuff like that, when it's like it's a green room and there's green. Otherwise, don't call it that. Call it, this is the room where we get ready for people and they can hang out and they can, that's too long. Yeah, it's a green room. Let's do that. Green is ready. You're right. Green is ready to go. It's the green room. You're ready to go. And so then maybe it should be the yellow room, because people are, not quite ready and they're kind of like getting ready to be there. You're right. Yeah, yellow is kind of like scared, but yellow's also, it's also a color of happiness. Yellow. So yeah, there you go. That's a lot of stuff right there. And yeah, so thank you guys for being here. This has been great. And this has been Talking Solutions, the panel version. There's one-on-one interviews that I do as well, and some other stuff that's going to be coming out at some point soon. So tune in for that. I'm Jonathan Pollop Saffer, and yeah, this has been a wonderful time. I've had a good time, and hopefully you've had a good time as well. So yeah, that's it. That's the end. That is the end. Yeah. Oh yeah, where you can find me. So on Instagram, you can find me on talking_solutions. Talking_solutions. I have a TikTok. I haven't posted there, but it's also Talking Solutions. And my YouTube is Talking Solutions. But if you search that, it doesn't seem to show up. But if you're watching this video, you've already found me. You're welcome. I don't know. No, that's not the right one. You've already found me. Congratulations. That's the word to follow that one. And then I also have The Sustainable Creation is my other Instagram, and My Ideas Never Die. I didn't really talk about that, but that's a startup that I've been working on. We're working on making a video game. It's an app. It's going to be an app that makes pursuing your passions in life into a video game and makes social interacting a video game. You know how awkward social interactions are? Wouldn't it be great if there was a video game that just made it better? There are games like that. But if you had an app, a social media app, where it's actually social, and then you can post media, and it actually helps you socialize with people and make connections in real life, that's what we're building, and it's coming. It's on its way. If you look out no, wait, which way is north? All right, so that it's coming from there. Coming from there. From Nico. He's the future. So, and he's got a compass on his in his hand now. It was on his ankle, and now it's on his hand, and now it's going back on his ankle again. Yeah. Well, we don't really actually need a compass. I was fooling around because the app's coming from the digital world, and I don't know where that's located. I think it's in the cloud. I think it's all around us and might be irradiating us a little bit. So I don't know. Maybe all this signals is not good for us, but only time will tell. Yeah, time will tell us. All right, well, that's enough of that. That's the wrap up, and we'll see you in other things, or you'll see me. And then if you physically show up here, then I'll see you. That's how that works. That's how reality works. You know, you show up and people see you, you see them, unless you're wearing an invisibility cloak, in which case you must be Harry Potter, and you're not here either because you're a fictional character. So that's it. That's all, folks. Goodbye.